Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, my car was recently attacked by aliens from the planet Omega 3. But the damage was only superfish oil. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take a look at Star Trek fleet captains from WizKids.
Full speed ahead, Mr. Sulu. My crazy concubine awaits. Mr. Spock, don't interfere. You are my science engineer. At warp 9, it's girls a bus. Oh, 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 this goes far more deep than lust. Because my name is Captain Kirk. That's in Siberia's Kirk. My 5-year mission is to find, my crazy concubine. Those Klingons better step aside. Those girls can run, but they can't hide. Leave me a blonde or better yet. Say close and find me a brunette. I got my phaser set on kill. Oh, those girls will bow down to my will. Because my name is Captain Kirk. That's in Siberia's Kirk. My 5-year mission is to find, my crazy concubine.
Hello everybody, we'll get back to the review in just a second. I just want to take a moment to ask you to go ahead and check out and subscribe to my other channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about military history and books on history and fun things like that. Please check that out, please subscribe, and now, back to the review.
In Star Trek fleet captains, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of either the Federation or the Klingon Empire as they attempt to explore a new region of space and win the most victory points. Players start with a fleet command base tile, and then they set out a number of card tiles, hexagonal card tiles, in order to create kind of this new region of space that both the Klingons and the Federation will be exploring. Now, at the very beginning of the game, players are going to set their kind of victory point goal. A standard game is 10. Now, that victory point goal is also going to be their fleet mustering size. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your deck of ships, you're going to shuffle them, and then you're going to be revealing ships. You're going to reveal them until they get up to, but do not surpass, your fleet level. So this usually means you're going to have 3 ships, sometimes more, sometimes less. Once you've assembled your fleet, you're going to look at your command decks. Now, essentially, you have, I believe, 100 command decks on your side, 100 command cards on your side. These are 10 decks of 10 cards each. Now, what you're going to do is, out of those 10 decks, you're going to select 4 decks that you're going to play with. You're going to go ahead, take those decks, shuffle them, and place them beside you. The other command cards you're going to put back in the box. They're not used in this game. Now, generally, you're going to want to select your command decks because you want them to match your missions that you're going to draw. Now, the different ships of your fleet are going to have different colors on them for your mission cards. Now, the mission cards are going to be combat, they're going to be science, they're going to be influence. You're going to draw a number of those cards. So the decks for your command deck, you want them to kind of be able to help you with the missions that you're going to try to perform during the game. Now, you shuffle your mission cards, you place them at the side of your command, and then you place 3 missions in front of you. If they say secret on it, you place it face down. Of course, only you know what that is. Now, of course, this is a hero click system game, meaning each of your ships has a hero click, and there are different power configurations. Now, the different power configurations affect things like your weapons, your shields, your engines, and your sensors. So you're going to go ahead and adjust your ship to whatever you want at the beginning of the game. You may also be able to cloak your ships. If you cloak your ship, that means you essentially can place 1 token representing your real ship, and then kind of a false token representing nothing, a bluff, and you can move them, and of course your enemy doesn't know which one is which. Now, on your turn, you can do a few things. You can move each of your ships once. You can adjust their power ratings once. You can take 3 actions, and I'll explain those more a little bit later. You can play your command cards. You can cycle through your mission cards, meaning get rid of one to get a new one. You can discard one of your mission cards as well. Now, when you move a ship, essentially you, of course, move it into a space that has not been explored yet. You move it in there. Now, it's going to say, most of these will say encounter and numbers. Like encounter 1 to 3, meaning you roll the die, and if you roll a 1 to a 3, you have an encounter. Your ship must stop there immediately. You draw an encounter card and you read the encounter. And the encounter may tell you all sorts of weird things that are happening that affect your ship, that region of space, or the game in general, that you need to resolve or, do whatever it says in order to continue with the game. Now, these are often things that occurred in the Star Trek TV shows and movies, like the lost planet of Aldea may appear, or you may meet some kind of a godlike alien, or there may be some aliens who need your help. There's all sorts of things you can find with those encounter decks. Now, assuming you didn't get an encounter card, what you can do is your engine rating tells essentially how far your ship can move. But each of those cards that you reveal is going to say a number, space number, how big it is. So if you've rolled a 5 and you move 1, if it says 3, then you can move through that into one more space. Now, some cards, though, they may have some stars or other terrain effects that affect your movement, but generally that's how you can move. Now, as I say, there are 3 actions you can take during your turn. One of those actions is the cloaking action I mentioned earlier. Essentially, you can place one of your action tokens next to the ship that is taking the cloaking action. You adjust its power curve to cloaking, and then you, of course, get the tokens out to put on the board. Now, you can do an influence action. If you are at a habitable planet and there is not another player does not have a ship there, you can take an influence action. And what that means is you can place one of your influence markers. Now, essentially, these are each a piece of a pie, a third of a pie. And what you're doing is you're trying to kind of gain control of that, and once you get all 3, you've got total control. But what it means here is essentially if you take the influence action, you can place your marker down, or if you're in a system that has influence actions of your enemy and your enemy is not there, you can remove one of their influence actions. Now, if ever during the game effects or an enemy has destroyed one of your ships, you can, at that time for an action, essentially recruit a new ship. Your original mustering limit actually goes up by 1 point, so you can go through again to muster until you get a ship that meets your mustering limits that you can bring into the game. Now, you can do repair actions. If you are at your command base, or if you're at a star base or an outpost, you can go ahead and actually repair your ship that's damaged. You can repair it 1 point of damage. Essentially, each ship has 3 points of damage. White is normal, yellow is 1 hit, red is 2 hits. So you can repair 1 point of damage for an action at an appropriate place. You can do scan actions. Now, there's some missions that may require you to scan stars or scan an enemy ship, and there is also the ability you can scan a face-down tile. If you scan that face-down tile, essentially you can look and see whatever that tile is and then place it down and put one of your scan markers on there. For the rest of the game, as long as that is face down, you can go ahead and look at it. If the enemy ever goes there, he too can't look at it unless he scans it or moves into it. You can do a transporter action. There are some missions that will require you to transport an away team down to a planet or beam them up or beam something to another ship. If you can fulfill that transporter action, that costs an action as well. Now, there are also, as I say, some various system tests that may pop up. Some card effects or other things may give you an advantage if you can do a certain test, or you may be required to do a certain test. And if you do that voluntarily, that is an action as well. Now, you can also do building actions, and this is actually part of the influence action, but what you can do here is if you have 1 influence on a habitable planet, you can build an outpost. If you have 2 influence on a planet, you can build a colony, and if you have 3 influence on a planet, you can build a starbase. Now, an outpost really can't defend itself. A colony has some defensive abilities, and a starbase has some pretty strong defensive capabilities as well. Now, when you build a starbase, you automatically get a victory point. Now, the last action that you can do is combat. You can do a combat action against an enemy ship. How you do combat is you have to be in the same location as an enemy ship, and you are essentially testing your weapons against their shields. So you look at the number of your weapons, and you roll a die, and you add the 2 together. Then you look at their shields, you roll a die, you add the 2 together. If you get better than their shields, then you knock them down 1 space. I think if you get double, then you knock them down 2 spaces. If, however, they roll higher with their shields, then nothing happens, they're fine. If you're in the same system and you want to break away, meaning you want to leave that system with an enemy, you essentially have to do a breakaway roll. You look at the size of your ship, the size of their ship, you each roll, and whatever gets the higher die added to the size of their ship determines the breakaway. If you're the person trying to break away and you win, you can just leave. If, however, the other person wins, you can still leave, but they get to do take one parting shot at you. Now, as you're going out exploring this region of space and taking these actions and confronting your enemies, you're also trying to fulfill your specific missions. Again, these are science, influence, and combat. You're trying to fulfill these various objectives that give you victory points. You may also get victory points from various encounters that pop up in the game and various system tests in the game. So, each turn, you and your opponent are going back and forth, moving all three of your ships, taking 3 actions. You are exploring new regions of space. You are having encounters. You are taking systems tests. You are engaging in combat. You are building outposts and spreading influence. And the first player to reach their victory point objective wins. Star Trek Fleet Captains. So, a few weeks ago, I did a video on my top 10 WizKids games of all time, and I had Star Trek Fleet Captains on the list. And I really liked this game, but I hadn't played it in years. It had been at least 5 years, probably more, since I had played this game. And I put it on the list, and then after I was watching the list, after I posted it, I thought, I wonder if that holds up. I wonder if I've played other games that I liked better than Fleet Captains. So Kim was over here, and we played this game. And she, of course, hadn't played it before, and I thought, I want to see if this is still as good as I remember it. Because I have this game, and I've had it for a long time, and it survived purges, but I hadn't played it, and I want to play it to see if it's really as good as I remember, because I loved this game when I played it about 10 years ago. I think I bought it in 2011, 2012, played it quite a bit, really enjoyed it, but I wanted to see, does it hold up? So the game it's not terribly complicated. It's one of those games that looks a lot more complicated than it is. Now, as you're playing the game, there's almost a 4X feel to the game because you're exploring, you're exploiting, you're combating. It's not quite a 4X game. I would say it's not quite a 4X game, but it kind of feels like elements of 4X here. But there's a lot of stuff about this game that I like. I like the HeroClix power curve system. However, I will say that 10 years ago, it was no big deal. And now my eyes are getting old, and it was hard to see the numbers. I could do it, but it was a little more strain, a little more time. So that they're very tiny, so that was an issue. You can also kind of they've got them on your ship cards, your power curve, so you can just kind of mark it on your ship curve if that's something you wanted to do. Ship card if that's something you wanted to do. But I really like that aspect of the game, and the exploration, the encounters really feel evocative of Star Trek here. And I like the models themselves. I think they look really good for what they are. Generally, this is one of those games where there's so much you want to do on a turn, but you've only got so many actions. And that's kind of where a lot of the fun stuff in the game happens, is you have to decide, well, what actions do I want to take? Do I want to send an away team down, or do I want to repair my ship? Do I want to attack my enemy, or do I want to try to fulfill some encounter that I want to do? So there's a bunch of different things, and combat is pretty intense. Because, again, it's die rolls, so there's luck, but you can mitigate it with your power curves, and you can kind of anticipate, are they going to come after me? Should I boost my shields? Do I want to go after them? Do I need to boost my weapons? So there's a lot of stuff like that, and it feels very thematic with Star Trek, where you're boosting your sensors or you're shifting power to your shields and whatnot, and it's very thematic there. I like the different missions. There's a lot of variety there with the things you can do to score points, and there's ways that you can, again, cycle through. So if you get something that's just not going to work, you can get rid of it, and you get through your deck, you can just kind of choose to start drawing cards, which is pretty cool. And there's a lot of variety there in the card choices. I like that aspect of it as well. So there's a lot of stuff there I like. Now, you've got those command decks. Now, first of all, the command decks, I think, are pretty cool and, again, thematic, because you can add crew members to ships. You can add Worf there, or Picard, or Kirk, or Uhura, or all these other different characters, you can add them onto your ship, and that's always a lot of fun. But then there's other cards you play that, allow you to have an advantage in combat, or maybe give you a boost when you're doing a sensors test, or just some other little spice and sugar in the game that I like a lot. But as much as I like playing those fleet cards, let me back up here. The rule book here is not good. This is one of those games that just has a rule book that is not as clear as it needs to be in a lot of areas. And it doesn't have an index, so you're kind of thumbing through trying to find stuff, and it's just not a great rule book. I'm really disappointed with the rule book. And one of the problems with the rule book is those cards, it's not entirely clear how you play those cards. Now, as I understand it, you can play a card every time there's any kind of a systems test. That's what I understand. I think I'm playing that right, but I'm still not 100% sure. And I suppose if I could do more research, I could find out. But that, to me, is pretty weak, and it's not explained well in the rules. So, as much as I like the cards and find them thematic, I'm still a little unclear on how to play the cards. That's one criticism I have with the game. There's another, and again, there's some of those little wonky things throughout the rule book I'm not a fan of. Now, one other thing I want to say too, and that is back in the day when I was playing this a lot, I played it 4-player once, so 2-on-2. And I'll tell you this right now, I don't like it. This is not a good 2v2 game. This is a 2-player game. It's a very good 2-player game, but it's not a good team game. It kind of reminds me of Star Trek or Star Wars Rebellion, where they say, "Oh yeah, you can play with 4 players," and you play with 4 players, and it kind of sucks. Now, I imagine if you make a big board, maybe it'd be a little bit better. But I just did not like the team game here at all. Too much downtime, and I was not a fan of the 4-player experience here. But generally, what I found playing this game again is I still love it. I still think this is a great game. This is, for all of its faults, it's still a very thematic Star Trek experience. It feels like Star Trek in the box. I'm also a big fan of Star Trek Ascendancy, but I've said before, you could take the Star Trek theme off Ascendancy and it would just be a great space civilization building game. And indeed, in Star Trek Ascendancy, as much as I love that game, I feel like thematically it doesn't quite work. There's places where thematically it's like, okay, all right, that doesn't quite work here. This game, I'm not prepared to say whether I like Ascendancy or Fleet Captains better at this point, but I will say that Fleet Captains definitely feels more Star Trek-y. It feels, I really feel like this is Star Trek in a box. I've never done a review of this game before, and I finally feel like now I can do my review I should have done this a long time ago. But I love this game. I absolutely do. It's a great Star Trek game, but it's just a fun 2-player space chess match. I've got this game, and I've got the 2 expansions they made for it. They made the Romulan expansion, which brings like espionage cards into it, and then you've got the Dominion expansion. It's a little more kind of combat and stuff. They're both fun as well. If you like the base game, you'll want to check out the expansions. I believe this game is still in print. I was looking the other day at WizKids' website and at Amazon. It looked like it's still up and running. So I recommend buying it. It's just a tremendously fun game. If you like Star Trek, you'll really get a kick out of it. And even if you're just so-so on Star Trek, I still think you'll have fun. Little dated, there's a few little issues here and there, but generally it really holds up. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history and books on history and fun things like that. Please check us out, please subscribe, and I'd ask you to please give a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. That helps us out a lot as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you a little question. Why did Worf change his hair color? It's a good day to die.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I've been dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
But
because of budget cutbacks, the Earth-Star Alliance has only given us one escape pod.